Just because a movie is based on a true story doesn't mean that everything you see in it actually happened. And to quote Pirates of the Caribbean, true events are more like guidelines than actual code. In this video, we're going to look at a number of different movies based on a true story and the big changes that were made to make them a little less true. Let's take a look, shall we? And warning, there will be some spoilers in this video, so make sure to check out the chapters so you don't have anything spoiled for you. Lin-Manuel Miranda might be best known for Hamilton, but the musical genius found himself behind the camera for the movie adaptation of the musical Tick-Tock Boom, which follows the life of Jonathan Larson, who is most famous for creating one of the most renowned musicals of all time, Rent. While Larson's story is truly spectacular, both the musical and the movie aren't entirely accurate. For example, his best friend Michael and his girlfriend Susan aren't real people. They're loosely based off of people Larson knew in his life, with the inspiration behind Michael also being diagnosed with HIV. Miranda did actually reveal that the person behind Michael is actually alive and well to this day, and is practically a champion swimmer. The inspiration behind Susan was a little less happy with the way that she was depicted in both the musical and the movie, saying that she never wanted to move to an ashram and that her time running out as a dancer was a lot more important to her than it was portrayed in the movie. The Wolf of Wall Street is so full of high-level debauchery and depravity that it feels too crazy to be true. The movie is actually more accurate to real life than you would think, with scenes like the helicopter crash at the beginning of the movie being very real. But there are many things in the movie that didn't happen or were only inspired by real events or people, such as Jonah Hill's character Donny Ossoff, who is loosely based off of Belfort's real-life business partner Danny Porresh. Danny has disputed a number of events that happened in the book, such as bringing a chimpanzee into the office and the fact that Jordan was dubbed the Wolf, and said that there were many things that were exaggerated. Another example is the way Jordan and Danny met, which wasn't in a diner, but they actually met through Belfort's first wife, who knew Porresh because they shared a bus on their morning commutes and lived in the same apartment building. However, Danny apparently is actually married to his first cousin, so yeah, there's that. Overall, though, the movie got an 80% accuracy rating on Information is Beautiful, which makes it 37.7% more accurate than the Imitation Game, but more on that later. The Social Network is another movie that is, for the most part, pretty accurate, garnering a 76.1% accuracy score from Information is Beautiful. But there were some scenes and events altered to charge up the drama. A number of things were altered to ratchet up the tension, such as Zuckerberg's relationship with Eduardo Saverin, his motivations for starting Facebook, and Sean Parker as a sort of antagonist. But the biggest change was that of Zuckerberg's girlfriend, Erica. The change being that she didn't actually exist. At the time, Zuckerberg was seeing his current wife, Priscilla Chan, and the two met early on in their Harvard days. The next one is a bit of a cheat, as it isn't actually a true story to begin with, but it is based on real people. Rain Man isn't a factual story, but the character of Raymond is an amalgamation of several people with autism. Primarily, Kim Peek, who had an encyclopedic memory which left the movie's screenwriter Barry Morrow stunned. Kim could apparently read a book in minutes and memorize everything he read forever. The whole casino road trip storyline in the movie is fiction, but Barry did actually end up taking Kim to a casino in Reno and gave him a book on counting cards to see what he would do. But Kim refused to take part as he didn't think it would be fair. In terms of the actual event itself, the crash landing in the Hudson River in Sully did actually happen and is pretty much accurate. But because the events in real life after the fact were pretty mundane, the movie decided to add a little drama to the mix and create a villain where there wasn't one. In this instance, it was the traffic board. In the movie, the traffic board claims Sully was drunk, claim he was negligent, state that one of the engines did have power in it, and that simulations show that he should have fairly easily made it back to the airport. In real life, though, none of this happened. In fact, the traffic board almost immediately sided with him, but seeing as that doesn't make much of a movie or conflict, they decided to add a little sauce into the script. Love him or hate him, Timothée Chalamet is seemingly in everything, and he has been a leading man for some time now, with him starring in the likes of Dune and The King. But while Dune might have been heralded for mostly staying true to the book, The King was less accurate to the real events. This is, in part, because the story is based on a play by Shakespeare, which portrays Prince Hal as hedonistic and irresponsible, but there's no actual historical evidence to support this. His friend Falstaff was also a creation and was based on a number of Shakespearean characters. Also, I have to say, Arpats, I love you, but your French accent is dreadful.
You seem so intent on making France your new,
I think John Cleese's in Holy Grail is better. While a number of movies in this video embellish a number of things, but for the most part stay accurate to true events, A Beautiful Mind sadly isn't one of them. While John Nash did suffer from schizophrenia and paranoia, he didn't hallucinate entire people like in the film, and his condition wasn't as severe as the movie made it out to be. Also, Nash wasn't the perfect husband figure as the movie suggests either, with him reportedly treating his wife like a slave and being abusive towards her, having multiple affairs with different men, and he also likely fathered at least one illegitimate child. Daniel Day-Lewis is famously a method actor who immerses himself in the character that he's playing, and famously signed off his texts as Abraham Lincoln while shooting the movie Lincoln, which, I mean, pretty sure Lincoln didn't have a cell phone, but whatever. However, despite DDL's dedication to the cause, the movie still has a number of historical accuracies, although admittedly the general overview of historical events is correct and the inaccuracies are all very nitpicky. For example, the moment in the movie where Lincoln refused to talk peace with the Confederates until the amendment was ratified. In reality, the peace conference and the 13th Amendment were connected and occurred around the same time. Other minor inaccuracies, done mostly for dramatic effect, include Mary Todd Lincoln watching the final voting from the House gallery, and the 50-cent piece did not bear Lincoln's face at the time. Zero Dark 30 famously follows the hunt for Osama bin Laden and his eventual escape, but the movie was initially going to focus on the hunt being a failure, until of course bin Laden was actually found during production, so the movie had to quickly change the ending while filming. However, while the movie garnered many plaudits, members of the CIA have said that while the movie is entertaining, it is mostly inaccurate. While many have claimed that the interrogation scenes are factually wrong, one of the main things that irked the agents was the character of Jessica, who was based on real-life agent Jennifer Matthews, with one agent saying, "I was so angry at this heated depiction of Jennifer as some fluffy-headed schoolgirl. I just lost respect for it right there." The Pursuit of Happyness is another movie that kind of polishes over some of the less shiny details. For instance, Chris Gardner did not get an interview with Dean Witter Reynolds by solving a Rubik's Cube, and while he did get arrested, it wasn't for parking tickets, but actually for domestic abuse, with the cops later adding the unpaid parking charge. The movie also leaves out the moment where Gardner's girlfriend actually took custody of their son due to the possible illegitimacy of his finances. Alejandro Iñárritu's The Revenant may be a visual delight, but it does play fast and loose when it comes to history. While Hugh Glass was left for dead by his cohorts, the rest of the facts were artistic license, shall we say. First of all, the attack, which actually some claim didn't happen, happened in the summer, not the winter. Because if it had been winter, the bear would have been hibernating. Also, there's no evidence supporting that Glass had a Pawnee wife or a half-Pawnee son, and while Glass did go looking for Fitzgerald and his companion John Bridger after they abandoned him, he didn't kill either of them, and actually forgave them before his actual death in 1883 after being attacked by an Arikara. Now, despite it being a historical epic, director and star Mel Gibson had no interest in making Braveheart historically accurate. The real Braveheart is actually Robert the Bruce, who was the subject of the Chris Pine Netflix movie Outlaw King. William Wallace was actually a member of the Scottish aristocracy. Scots didn't wear kilts at this time in history, and England had only controlled Scotland for a year when Wallace and co. decided to revolt. As we mentioned, the Imitation Game ranks pretty low when it comes to historical accuracy. Garnering a score of 42.3% historical accuracy on Information is Beautiful, and the events of the movie are pretty much created for drama. For a start, the Polish scientists assisted Turing massively, and their early work cracking Enigma codes and assisting Turing in perfecting his code-breaking machine were one of the main reasons he was successful, although they barely get a mention. The story of Turing covering for a Soviet spy who threatened to expose his sexuality was completely made up, and it's actually kind of insulting to Turing that they accused him of doing so. The Greatest Showman's P.T. Barnum may be a beloved figurehead who championed equality, but the real Barnum could have hardly been further from the character portrayed by the ever-charming Hugh Jackman. Barnum was actually a slave owner, with him marketing elderly black woman Joyce Heth as the 161-year-old nursemaid for George Washington, and carted her around the country despite her being ill, and when she died, he performed a live autopsy on her corpse for everyone to see. The romantic relationship between Zendaya and Zac Efron's characters was also a work of fiction. Now, Zack Snyder's 300 is obviously not meant to be 100% historically accurate, and is meant to replicate the comic book as opposed to real events, but anyway, we're gonna dissect it here. While an army of 300 Spartans did in fact repel a big Persian army, the opposition army was actually closer to 300,000 as opposed to 1 million, and they were also assisted by 7,000 other Greek soldiers, but of course, it was still an incredible feat. And finally, Cool Runnings might be an absolute classic, but the movie is unfortunately not very accurate. The Jamaican team was actually embraced by the other teams at the Olympics, and the team weren't failed sprinters, but were recruited from the army by 2 Americans.